Hey friends, today I'm going to be showing you one super simple, super quick trick for adding some dimension to your watercolors so it doesn't look flat, so that you can really make it pop on the page. And super easy, so let's go. All right, so today I just want to show you a really quick and simple way that I use when painting in watercolor to make my very flat two-dimensional piece of paper and very flat two-dimensional swath of watercolor across the page not look flat. I think it's very easy if we paint some watercolor and let it dry for it to look really flat across the page. There's not much going on and it can look really flat once it dries. So in order to make something pop so that we have something that doesn't just look like flat paint across the page, say we're painting a flower and we have painted some of our petals and we know that we've just used this one color to paint them. And even though there's some variety in how much paint is in each section of the petals, it will still dry rather flat. And in order for us to be able to add some dimension in that, we can do a couple things. Well, first of all, we can add a darker or a different color in the center, depending on what color the center of our flower is. And while the petals around it are still wet, we can add our center so that the center kind of starts seeping out. If you're painting something that is generally curved around like a flower, you will find that is where the most shadows will be. So that is one way with flowers that you can add a little bit of dimension, is to kind of help that out. The other thing is I'll take my primary color, here being yellow, and I'll just add a second color. Now, depending on the yellow I'm using, I'm either going to use a darker or lighter version of that color. In this instance, it's a pretty light yellow, so I might come in with a darker yellow and just kind of start adding in a little bit of shadow effect in there by coming in with that darker yellow. You can wait until it's dried completely, of course, and come in and paint over that dried area, or you can add color in while it's still wet, depending on what kind of effect you want, whether it's wet on wet or wet on dry. Another instance I might use this is if I'm painting a leaf on a flower. When this dries, again, it's going to look very flat, but if I come in with a second color, I can start adding a little bit of dimension in there. Sometimes it's really, really subtle and not as obvious, and sometimes it's, of course, more obvious. If you're painting kind of wet on wet, sometimes it'll be less obvious because it's combining the colors together. And wet on dry, you can really define the shapes that you want to create in this alternate color. You can also come in with a darker version of the color that you have created here. I usually just add a little drop of Payne's Gray to whatever color is my primary color that I'm wanting to add onto. And say we have our stem coming here and our leaf branching out. It's probably going to be some shadow along the base here. And so I will just come in with that darker green that I've created just by adding some Payne's Gray. And I can kind of help guide that color up to where the shadows will be along that leaf. Very easy, very simple way of just adding some dimension in there. So an example of a piece that I spent some time on, you can see here that every leaf and petal that I've created has more than one color within that. Even if you're creating a white flower, it's going to have a lot of color in that white because of the shadows are going to hold a lot of color in them. And you can really see the difference here between these areas that have different tones of colors and shadow effects in them, as opposed to these areas up here, which were just one clean, light wash of just one color. You can really see kind of the difference between the two and how one of them really pops on the page and the other one is just flatter effect. So you can obviously use that within your painting if that is the effect that you're wanting to create, but just so you have an idea of how you can really add some dynamic to the painting, and it's just a really simple way of doing that and creating that. Hey guys, it's me again, Isa. If you liked this tutorial, make sure you subscribe to my channel and leave a comment. Tell me something you loved about the class. Feel free to ask me some questions, but definitely subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future tutorials. See you next time.